Drassen had his hand on Hatch's collar before I'd even cleared the doorway of interrogation room 4, and I told him once, quietly, to take it off. He laughed. Hatch didn't move, didn't growl, didn't so much as lift his head from where it rested against my boot. He just looked at the hand. Drassen took the hand back. He didn't know why. Neither did I, not really, not in any way I could have explained to a man wearing Concord field plate. You learn to read it eventually. The dog reads it faster. My name is Cole Ibarra. I run interrogations out of Calder Reach Station, a transfer facility wedged into a neutral corridor between 3 governments that don't trust each other and one species, mine, that none of them trust at all. I don't carry a weapon into the room. I carry a 6-year-old Belgian Malinois named Hatch, and a folder, and very little patience for theater. The folder that morning belonged to Sub-Commander Reth Kahlo, captured 11 days prior running weapons through a corridor he wasn't supposed to know existed. Concord officer, mid-rank, the kind of confidence that survives capture because it was never built on anything real to begin with. He sat across the table with his wrists in restraints he clearly considered an insult, and when Hatch came around the table and lay down at my feet, Kahlo actually smiled. You brought a pet, he said. I brought a colleague. It is an animal. So am I said, and sat down, and opened the folder, and that was the last easy thing either of us said for the next 40 minutes. Kahlo talked the way men talk when they've decided talking is a weapon and silence is a weakness. He told me about the corridor, a version of it, the version that made him a courier instead of a smuggler. He told me about his superiors, a version of them too. Twice he looked at Hatch like he expected the dog to flinch at the volume of his voice. Hatch yawned the second time, slow, unbothered, and went back to watching Kahlo's hands. I want to be honest about something the briefing packets never get right. Hatch doesn't read lies. Dogs don't know what a lie is. What he reads is everything underneath one, the breath that catches half a second before a sentence, the pulse you can see in a throat if you know where to look, the smell that changes when fear shows up under the cologne. He'd been doing it since he was 14 months old and a trainer named Park decided a working dog's nose was wasted on luggage. By the time he came to me, he didn't flag liars. He flagged people who were about to stop lying. Different skill. Better one. 20 minutes in, Kahlo tried a different angle. He offered me a name, a real one, he said, a supplier higher up the chain than himself, in exchange for the dog being removed from the room. He framed it as a courtesy, professional to professional, one interrogator's discomfort to another's. I told him the dog wasn't a negotiating chip and the name he was offering was almost certainly invented, the same way the corridor was, built fast to look expensive. Kahlo's jaw tightened. He tried it twice more, smaller each time, the way a man tests a locked door he already suspects won't open, just to be sure he isn't the one who's wrong about it. 40 minutes in, Kahlo's hands had gone still twice and his story hadn't. Hatch sat up. That's the tell I work off now, 3 years into this partnership. Not a bark, not a growl, those would mean I'd already lost the room. Just the dog sitting up, attentive, eyes on the subject like he's waiting for an answer he already knows is coming. Kahlo saw it and laughed again, thinner this time. It thinks I am lying. He doesn't think anything. He's a dog. Then why does it watch me? Because you keep moving your hands when you talk about the corridor and you don't move them at all when you talk about your superiors. He's not judging the words. He's just noticing you're more comfortable with the part that isn't true. Kahlo went quiet for the first time since I'd sat down. It didn't last. That's when Drassen came back in. I hadn't asked for him. Station command had, citing protocol I didn't recognize and didn't have time to argue with, and Drassen had a temperament that read trouble from across a room, the kind of guard who treats a calm prisoner as an insult to his own competence. He stood behind Kahlo's chair, arms crossed, and when Kahlo's hands went still a third time, mid-lie, Drassen reached past him and grabbed my dog by the scruff to drag him back from the table, like Hatch's stillness was the problem instead of the answer. I didn't say anything that time. There wasn't time to. What I can tell you is what the room looked like 4 seconds later, because I counted, because counting is a habit you keep when your other habit is staying calm in rooms where nobody else does. Drassen's hand was empty. Drassen was sitting down, hard, against the wall, breathing like a man who'd just remembered something about his own size relative to the situation. Hatch was back at my feet, lying down, chin on his paws, exactly where he'd started. No sound. No blood. No mark on him that I ever found, then or after. Whatever happened in those 4 seconds happened very fast, and entirely off the part of the room I was watching, and Drassen never once, in the 2 years I worked that station afterward, volunteered to stand guard in interrogation room 4 again. Kahlo had gone the color of old paper. "It is a death world animal," he said. Not a question. The first true thing he'd said all morning, and Hatch, for the first time, looked almost bored by it. "He's a Belgian Malinois," I said. "Working breed. We use thousands of them. Customs, search and rescue, kids' birthday parties where somebody's uncle insists on bringing the dog. He's not special. That's the part nobody out here ever believes. Your government sent soldiers to negotiate this corridor. My government sent me and him. I watched that land. Not the threat, there hadn't been a threat, not from me, not from Hatch, nothing you could write into an incident report beyond a guard who'd lost his footing and a dog who hadn't moved. What landed was the math of it. 11 days of careful lies, built to survive interrogators, soldiers, a tribunal if it came to that. Built to survive everything except a quiet man and a dog who weren't trying to break him at all, who were simply going to sit there, patient, until the truth got tired of holding its breath. Kahlo talked for another hour after that. The real corridor. The real superiors. The real reason 11 days in a holding cell hadn't broken him but 4 seconds against a wall had. He never said that part outright, but I'd done this job long enough to hear it underneath the rest. He talked the way men talk when the performance has stopped being worth the energy it costs to keep running, when the only audience left in the room is one that was never impressed by it to begin with. Station command pulled me aside afterward, wanting to know what had happened to Drassen, wanting a report that used words like incident and use of force. I told them what I'd seen, which was nothing. A guard who'd reached for a restrained animal and lost his footing doing it. Nobody pushed harder than that. Nobody ever does, not once they've watched the footage twice and noticed the dog never once left the floor. When the session ended he asked, almost gently, if Hatch had a name. I told him. He nodded like that mattered, like a name made the dog smaller and more dangerous at the same time, the way it does for any of us. Then the guards came to take him back to his cell, and he didn't say another word, not that day, not at his hearing 3 weeks later, not when they read the corridor's real coordinates into the record and watched his own testimony hang him with it. Hatch slept the whole way back to the kennel block, head on my boot the same as always, like none of it had cost him anything at all. Maybe it hadn't. I never found out what those 4 seconds took out of him, and he was never going to be the one to tell me. I've run interrogations for 11 years. I've had partners with badges and partners with law degrees, and exactly one partner who never needed to raise his voice to end an argument before it started. People ask me sometimes what makes him good at the job. I tell them the truth, the same way I told Kahlo. He's not special. He's just a dog who never once needed to pretend he wasn't dangerous, because the room always figured it out on its own, eventually, usually around the time it stopped mattering.